Have you ever wondered what really drives the amazing people behind the hunting, fishing, and outdoor brands you know? Well, I did, so I set out to meet them. See, Aldo Leopold said there are some who can live without wild things and some who cannot. These are the exclusive interviews with those who cannot. My name is Kasey Mock. I'm an adventure hunter, avid outdoorsman, entrepreneur, and family man. This is the Bucks to Business podcast presented by Mock Ranches. The history of taxidermy work dates back to the early 1740s when the French used to preserve game birds for display. By the 18th century, almost every town in France had a tannery business, and by the 19th century, big game hunters began bringing their trophies to the upholstery shops to have their hides sewn up and stuffed with cotton rags. The golden age of taxidermy was during the Victorian era, when mounted animals became a popular part of interior design and decor in England. Today, taxidermy work is equally at home in a museum or a restaurant as it is in a hunting lodge or a trapper's cabin. It's fascinating artwork. My name is Kasey Mock. I'm your host. Today's guest on the podcast is Eric Buell. Eric is the owner of Hookin B Taxidermy in Wimberley, Texas. Eric's a really good friend and is an extremely talented taxidermist. Eric and I have a great conversation about the taxidermy industry. We share some hunting tips and tips on preparing an animal for the taxidermist. I hope you enjoy this episode. Eric, man, thanks for hanging out with us on the Bucks to Business podcast. It's pretty cool in this industry because we make really good friends in this industry. It's kind of unique. And so you and I met each other about 4 years ago?
Yeah, something on those lines.
Probably?
Yeah.
Trying to be a team roper back then when we met.
Mm-hmm.
You've kind of mastered that. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And but we met each other and became friends. And so you own Hookin B Taxidermy here in Wimberley, Texas.
Right.
We started doing business shortly thereafter. So I appreciate you coming on. I think what you do is an art, and it's definitely something that people in our industry are interested in. And so thanks for hanging out with us.
You bet.
Tell us about yourself, man. Who is Eric Buell?
Well, he's a taxidermist. He's a father. He's a coach. He's a team roper. He's into a lot of things. Mainly, he's got a passion for the outdoors. I started this business because, I wanted to stay in touch with the outdoors all year long. I didn't want to do it part-time and be a part-time deer guide or a part-time, skinner, flesher, or something like that at a meat processing plant. So I kind of stuck with it, through the hard knocks and started from the bottom and I'm still working on getting to the top. So.
Well, you're talented. Through the years, through our hunting firm, we've used a lot of taxidermists, and you're talented, man. When we send clients to Hookin B, they're always impressed. I'm impressed with the detail, and we'll get into some of the practices of your work a little bit later on the discussion. You said you're a family man. Tell us about your family real quick.
Yeah, I'm been married for about 8.5 years now, and got a 7-year-old little boy and a 5-year-old little girl, Sladen Harlow. My wife, she's, a big city girl, so she loves hunting and fishing and stuff, but, just likes to do it as a, very minimal recreational type deal. So, but my little boy's crazy about it. He lives, breathes fishing, hunting, anything to do with outdoors. He's a little sports fanatic.
He's quite the football player.
Yeah, well, for a 7-year-old, I guess. But yeah, they're very busy. My son likes to ride horses, and my daughter loves horses. My wife's kind of like, she'll take it or leave it on the horses, but
right.
But it's a full-time job with the taxidermy and kids and a family. So
now you rope just a little bit also, don't you?
Yeah. I team rope a lot more when the kids weren't involved in sports or activities. I was going every weekend. Now it's about once a month. So it's drastically slowed down, but we still go to Las Vegas for the team roping finals.
Yeah, you rope enough to make the big shows every year.
Yeah, I rope at the jackpots that'll get me there. I try not to.
Is that primarily the World Series or the U.S. Ropens? What are you doing?
Primarily, open rodeos and World Series.
Okay.
The World Series pays so well, so you can basically hit one of those jackpots and win $15,000.
When do you go to Vegas next?
We leave for Vegas on November 31st.
Okay.
And we'll be there for 8 days, and we'll rope till Wednesday of the following week, and then we're headed back home to come back and do some hunting.
So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you like to hunt. I bet you like to hunt for free even more. Go to feverpursuit.com/podcast and subscribe for a chance to win a free hunt. That's feverpursuit.com/podcast.
So how'd you get into the taxidermy business? We're sitting here in your beautiful showroom, man. You got a great place here right outside of Wimberley. So if there's an echo, that's because we're in the big showroom. But tell us how you got in the taxidermy business, your background in the hunting industry. That's what our people want to hear.
Well, so when I went to college, I've always liked hunting. I was a late bloomer when it came to hunting. My dad wasn't very involved in hunting. My brother was crazy about it. So when I went to college to play football. So when I played football at college, you couldn't work as a, for the NCAA rules. You couldn't have a job. You had to.
Where'd you play football?
I played football at Angelo State and a year at Texas A&M. So when
you're a little league coach, you actually are qualified.
I don't know if I'm qualified, but
let's clarify this real quick.
I don't know if there's any qualifications for Pee Wee football, but it's very trying. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in any kind of athletics. But to go back to it, we in college we couldn't work, and so I had to leave college on Thursday when we didn't have football season, so I'd have to drive home. Well, my brother was a full-time a big game guide, so exotics, whitetail, whatever, So I came back every Thursday, and I'd work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because it was a cash-paying job.
Just guiding hunts for him.
Right. Just being an exotic guide. So when that was over, the rush of the deer season through, axis season and, May, June, then there was nothing. So when I was
that breaks into two seasons for the listeners, right? I mean, the exotics, you hunt most of those in the spring.
Right.
Because the axis deer will rut when? April, June, July?
Right. And then you get, you have so many different seasons. There's, for one, there's whitetail season. Then you've got, pretty much the spring season, which is basically axis, because they're the most prominent to have horns at that time in the summertime. And then when you get to September, that's when everything else grows: fallow, cyca, red deer, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, they follow more closely along your standard big game antlered species.
Right.
Why did the axis deer? The first place I was ever on was in San Angelo. It was a low fence place on the Concho River. Bodie Langford owns it. It's called the Tres Coyotes Ranch. And that's the first place I ever encountered axis deer. And we'd be all fired up, right? This was a fall lease, so we'd start hunting in October and we'd hunt through January. And we were super fired up because in the summer we would see these big axis deer, free-ranging axis. But then come bow season, they'd all drop their antlers. Why is that?
Well, just from being in the business, I've found that, axis or a rainforest type animal, they're from the jungle, India. It's a very different climate.
Right.
So as they transferred them, to the United States, they became more of a summer deer, which would be more spring, rains and stuff like that. So it carried through just kind of in the same time as when in India would be their breeding season.
I gotcha.
Well, now that there's so many axes, they've kind of prolonged and added more depth to their having babies and stuff like that. So now 20% of them have babies in the winter, and about 80% have babies in the spring. So now you're talking about having hardhorn axis in summer and winter.
Well, for a ranch owner, that's a great a great species to have, because it spreads that cash flow out if you're in the hunting business.
Yeah, and if you can get say that you're stocking, or you're getting your ranch loaded up with whatever you need, it's a good investment to buy wintertime bucks.
Gotcha.
Because when do people hunt?
Yeah, wintertime.
Winter. So,
it's an upsell too.
Yeah. So if they're sitting in a deer stand and a axis comes out and they go, hey,
gotcha.
I'd like to have that.
So you were guiding for your brother, Travis.
Yeah. So I was guiding for him, worked for them. So when that lull fell, I had to do something, because
this is like late '90s, early 2000s. What is this?
Yeah, late 1997 to 2000.
You're an old fart. You're almost 40.
Yeah, pushing it. So
starting to get gray.
But
in
I'm
your
young.
beard.
I'm young at heart.
Yeah, starting to get gray in your beard.
Yeah, that's from a lot of my wife and my children. So. But no, so I continued to do that. So what happened was, in the summer, obviously I was laid off of football for a few months, so I'd come home and I'd go to work for a very close friend of ours, Jet Smith in Kerrville, who was a very successful taxidermist. Now he's just into the mannequins and making the forms for the actual deer. He doesn't do much taxidermy anymore. So but when I was there, I worked for him fleshing deer hides, sewing holes, preparing mannequins for mounting, setting horns, just very odds and ends. So after several years of that, I felt like I needed to step up and do something for myself, because football's not going to last forever. So I need to find a career, and what better career to have when I could go hunting, fishing, and come back and look at this stuff every day, So
then all your fishing trips became a business expense, right? A write-off.
So you got to decorate the showroom.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So, but it was a good decision. My mom wanted me to be a football coach. Well, I know I'm not going to make it as a football coach after 2 years of Pee Wee football. So.
You think that tries your patience?
Yeah, that is 100% the hardest thing I've ever done.
Now, you hadn't always been in Wimberley. You were where before here?
I was all over. I had a shop in Pearsall.
Okay.
For 4 years. Left Pearsall and moved to Comfort. Opened a shop in Comfort, and the business just wasn't generating as I'd like. And at the time, I was having to supplement my taxidermy by guiding hunters in the winter. So I'd spend all winter guiding hunters, collecting pieces to mount. So when I was in Comfort, my wife was home alone with the children, and she's originally from Wimberley, and she said, hey, my mom's in Wimberley, I need to be closer for some help, and then so we moved up here. She got, her mother helped her out a little more with the babies and stuff like that. So then I decided to retire from guiding, and now I'm here full time, and it's been a very good move. It's been a blessing. We've got a ton of local customers, and I do a lot of corporate stuff too. So the move here was good. There's a lot of people around this area that were looking for somebody that would pay attention to detail and to give them a little extra than just a mount,
Right.
And that's what we try to do. We're not going to say that we're perfect and by any means, and there's going to be, mistakes made, and there's going to be things that we can fix, or you can do better, or something you may like or you may not like, but it is out of the last 7 years, we've had just a few things that people didn't, like or care for. But it is an art, and it is kind of how we see it, So there's going to be times like that. So.
Well, you built your business very organically, much how a lot of entrepreneurs do, especially in the outdoor space. You talked about your guiding hunts, and that's where you're actually recruiting clients, not just individual hunters, but also ranches to send you all their work. And you showed them the quality of work that you could do. And over time, that built a client base that now returns new clients to you, right? Based on referral business?
Well, what I did that in the industry is I shouldn't say that I really focused on corporations and ranches that were entertaining, and it was all on their bill, So what I did was I would go to those ranches and I would guide for those folks, and made a relationship with the ranchers and the owners way before I wanted their taxidermy work. So in doing so, I worked all these relationships up, and when I turned around and I said, man, I got to do something. I can't guide hunters all my life. I've got kids, and I've got to be home with them. Got to help my wife. I have to do things like that. So when I went to retire, basically from deer guiding, I just started calling these guys and saying, hey, I'm full-time taxidermy. I'm going to offer you a 6 to 8 month turnaround, guaranteed. If it goes over, we'll have, some kind of discount or some kind of, next year's type, discount for you. But, I really attacked, I should say that, I mean, that's kind of a vicious word, but I kind of attacked the guys that I made, relationships with, and in doing so, I created such a big customer base, because one ranch would send me 100 clients, and when they got their taxidermy work, they would call and say, hey, I'm going to Africa next month. Would you mind if, I sent all my stuff? Absolutely not. Come on,
Yeah, perfect.
So and now that I've scaled it back, on a corporate level, I take a lot more, locals and walk-ins, So my main thing is staying connected to my customers over and over and over again, creating something new for them in the future, and making sure that, that I supply the utmost customer service that I can, at possible. There's so many misconceptions about taxidermy, and there's such a bad name for a lot of taxidermy companies, and I don't want that reputation. If there's something wrong, I'll definitely fix it. No questions asked. You're not, it's like you and I did a mule deer pedestal for you, I think, a few months ago, and the wood that the mule deer was connected to cracked, and brought it back in. We fixed it up. You're ready to go in a week. That's just the things that I can't. I want to get the bad taste out of people's mouths on taxidermy, because they're not all the same. I hate that I get thrown into a category like that because of the taxidermy name. If we could just get one message out there, it's, hey, look, they're not all the same. Ask anybody that does business with me.
Yeah, they're not. We've used so many across the country, and they're not. The taxidermy work, you have to be an artist, but you also have to service people, because this is you're working completely in a recreational industry,
right.
And people are doing this because they want to have fun. It's a part of what they're passionate about, like you and I. And the trophy head, there's a big misconception, in my opinion, of what the trophy head means. A lot of people think we go out into the woods and we kill a poor innocent animal and we don't care anything about them, and we leave the meat there, we cut their head off, and we bring it back because we want to show how bad we are, right?
Well,
and
that's how the media persona, all of hunting is a poacher. You're all poachers, and that's, to me, that's not the way this world works.
My wife asked me the question, why do you need another deer on the wall? Why do you want to get this deer mounted? Don't you have enough? And I tell her, well, we hunt like 3 or 4 months out of the year. And the rest of the year, if you're like me, you're thinking about hunting, you're planning your hunts, you're exercising, you're shooting, you're lining up ranches, we're managing the animals, and for the health of the animal. And then we go target selectively some of these older animals, and we take those older animals out of the herd. But that mount, that piece of taxidermy art, that's really the only thing we have to remember that animal by forever. So you want it to last a long time. Some taxidermy work doesn't.
Right.
You want it to last a long time. Past eating the meat, which lasts, let's say a year, you eat on that animal for a year. Past that, that's really your only memory that you have, and so it's pretty special for a lot of folks.
Well, in the industry, a trophy is not a score. It's not a how big, how much it weighed. It's nothing of that. People are completely missing the point of why we do this. We do this because we're honoring a warrior,
Sure.
A survivor, an animal that has made it through his whole life. And there's a lot of people that say, why would you kill a deer? You know what? A deer's going to live 7-8 years old in the wild, period.
Something's going to kill him.
Something's going to
kill him, and something's going to eat him.
Or
that's the fact that life eats life. That's the harsh reality.
Right.
Is life eats life.
But on the flip side of it, if you don't control or you don't contain animals, you're going to have such an epidemic on your highways. You're going to have an epidemic in your towns, which you can see a little of it now in neighborhoods.
Moved to Wimberley.
Yeah, the deer are like ants. You can't get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, to place an animal on my wall, what bigger and better honor is it for me to look up there and go, man, I hunted that deer for 3 years.
I agree completely.
And
you've got deer in here in the showroom from 100 inches. Talk about Boone and Crockett's score.
Uh-huh.
From 100 inches to 250 inches, maybe bigger, maybe close to 300.
Yeah.
Just whitetail, and then of course you've got big elk and bears, nilgai, kudu, addax, fallow deer, axis. I'm just looking at different species that are in here. Pronghorn, some African species, but every deer in here means something different to the person that killed it. And so we get the question, I talk to hunters sometimes that they haven't killed the giant deer, but it's a deer they worked hard for and they're proud of it. Maybe they killed it on their own ranch, especially like in my business in the real estate industry. Somebody will buy a ranch and they manage this ranch for a few years and they shoot their first what they call trophy deer on the ranch. And they're super proud of it. And they bring it to the taxidermy shop and it's little compared to the other ones. And I tell them, it don't matter. I'm paying attention to that. If that deer means a lot to you, that's why you do this.
Right.
Or else you only have one deer in here a year, and it's the only one bigger than the last year's.
Right.
That's not much of a business.
And that's how I try to, every customer that comes in here, I don't care if it's, like you said, an 80-inch whitetail or a 350-inch whitetail or whatever. They all get treated the same.
Yeah.
And that's the main point of all this is it doesn't matter if you kill a small one or a big one. You're going to get the same quality. We're going to put the same touches that we can that prove that they're lifelike, in their own element. You're not going to get a 100-inch whitetail with all these crazy muscles and stuff because they just don't have them.
Doesn't look natural.
Right.
That's what's different about your work, Eric, that I noticed is it's very realistic. And some taxidermists go over the top with the muscle. Some of them go way under because they don't know how to shape forms, I guess. I don't really understand, the components of the business. A lot of them seem to really struggle with facial expressions. So when you talk about specialty and kind of your niche, what would you say is your niche and your specialty? I know you make some of your own forms.
Right.
So talk to us about that. What makes Hookin B different?
And just like you said, the specifics, you have to give each one of these an expression, a different expression. You can't mounting a deer the same way every year, and you set it up on the wall and you go, look, that looks like a generic setup. You know, every deer in here has a different look. Their ears are different. Their eyes, their expressions in their eyes, their noses.
Yeah, there's a half dozen just flat back, wall mount, semi-sneaks in here, and every one of them looks different.
Right.
Whereas if you walk into a lot of taxidermy shops, the only thing different are the antlers on each one of them.
You know, and what I did was I had a lot of help, but I was so disappointed in the everyday mannequins that you receive from the suppliers. You know, like I said, one of my good friends and my brother's best friend, Jet Smith, he owns a taxidermy supply place in Kerrville. You know, he started out doing that. You know, he wasn't happy with what was going on, so he started making his own. Well, I didn't get into making my own to make a profit. Okay, I don't want a taxidermy supply company at all. I want, when I pull a mannequin out and I pour a mannequin for somebody, I want to get that mannequin and go, this is gonna look great. You know, and I know I can't do that with a standard mannequin from another company, so I spent the time with some other guys. Wasn't completely my ideas. There's a lot of guys in this with me, and I just felt that, there's a lot more that we could give to the customer by, creating our own mannequin and giving them a little bit different look. A deer head is to me, when you look at one as generic, I don't even look at it twice. I walk by, I look up, and I go, okay. But when I get one I look at and I go, man, they did a great job on that, because there's a lot of very talented people, in the industry. But people get to the point of it's just time to mount one, get it over with, get paid.
Yeah, they start looking at the units. How do we turn units?
Right.
Fast enough.
And that's what we've stayed away from and by having the people that love the business, you can hear a sawzall going in the back.
This is a live shop, so you're going to be able to hear some tools.
Right. So I've got a lot of good employees. I've got a very talented taxidermist that works for me that's trained under me and who's very good. Probably one of the best cat guys I've ever met.
For mountain like bobcats, mountain lions,
and mountain lions. He's very intricate, from the point of plucking every whisker out of the skin and reapplying it when the mount's done. So
is that who does your bears and stuff also?
No, I do most of the bears. I do most of the bears and the kind of eccentric type pieces, that are a little
full
bit
body mount deer, aoudad, sheep.
But I've got all the trust in these guys in the back as well. They're gonna do just as good a job as I can. But here it is. My shop. I make sure that it's right too. But
how many deer do you think you'll do this year?
This year,
total mounts.
Last year we did 420. I would say we would do close to that this year. Maybe a little more.
Mostly whitetail, maybe 2/3 whitetail?
No, I would say 50-50. We probably do 200 whitetail and 200 exotics,
or other species, elk, mule deer, bears, whatever.
Right, yeah. Mainly though, as a whole, the whitetail is obviously a big market here.
Yeah.
And since that I have so many connections down south, I get a lot of deer from South Texas. So,
what's the biggest? Being in a lot of deer camps, and I see guys fumbling around trying to cape deer. It's a cluster. I can only imagine how hard a job the taxidermist is going to have sewing some of these things up. They look like they get hit by a truck with razor blades on the front. What's the biggest mistake you see people make when they're prepping a hide for a taxidermy? Like if I'm at the ranch and I kill the deer and I think, it's hot outside, so I'm going to go ahead and cape this deer so I can freeze the cape.
Right.
And I'll bring Eric the head and the cape separately. What's the biggest mistake people make?
The biggest mistake is, or mistakes, plural, cutting up the brisket too far.
Where should you stop?
You always stop at the breastbone on a shoulder mount where you cannot rip through it. Okay.
Right.
So that's one huge mistake. Second thing is it's cutting inside the armpits. You know, when you're skinning a deer out, the best thing to do if you have no idea what you're doing, or you think you're a skinner or a professional taxidermist, you know, always remember, if I tube it out, which means just ring it around the knee, the knee joint, and then peel it off.
That's better.
Yeah, and then skin it all the way up to the neck.
I think I've been guilty of cutting up a lot of armpits.
We all have.
I see hunting guides, man. You probably see this.
Yeah, I have.
I see so many hunting guides in camp, and somebody's paid them thousands of dollars to come hunt, and they've harvested an animal, maybe the biggest they've ever harvested, and these guys have no clue how to cape an animal.
You know, and that's being in the hunting industry for so long, you know, when you walk up to a camp of deer guides, of real deer guides, you know who's supposed to be there and who's not.
You bet.
You know, I mean, a guy can skin a deer in 7-8 minutes, you know, and prepare it for a shoulder mount and never cut a hole.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, mainly,
what kind of knife do you use? Do you use a little razor? Like
No, I don't.
For caping, do you use just your skinning knife or what?
I use a bird beak Victorinox. They're very cheap, inexpensive. They're $5 a piece. You know, you can buy a dozen of them. You know, and for the price of one knife.
Right.
The reason I use those is you can resharpen them very quickly. Take a regular pole steel, smooth steel, hit it on there about 3 or 4 times. Take one of those little, those slide through knife.
Right. Crock stick deals.
Right. Slide through there 3 times, hit it on that steel.
My buddies own Grand Zine's Meat Market in New Braunfels, and they process, like 12,000 deer a season or some crazy number. There's a good phone ring right there. But all of their meat processors use that same Victorinox knife.
Right.
For that reason. It's not a great knife.
No, it's
but
a
if
cheap.
you break them, you throw them away, but they sharpen real easy.
Right. And that's the main thing is being able to be efficient with a knife. If you skin a deer and you have to go back to the sharpen and stone and get another edge on it,
Sure.
and then, that's not efficient for us. To have it and cheap, everybody's into that, but we can do a lot better of a job with cheaper equipment, on skinning or caping or stuff like that than having a $150 knife.
Yeah. Hey guys, let's talk real estate for a second. Buying or selling a piece of land may be the largest financial transaction you'll ever make. Gary Keller once said, there are 2 kinds of real estate agents, those who list property and those who market property. At Mock Ranches, we are ranch marketing experts. So choose a real estate firm that specializes in land sales and understands land management. Learn more at mockranches.com and receive a free ranch map when you mention the Bucks to Business podcast. That's mockranches.com. So here's another question, because I've asked you this question. I went sheep hunting this spring, turned out to be a cluster. I should have hired you instead of doing a DIY sheep hunt. But 2 questions. Prepping a deer for full body mount is the first one. And the second, because I like to hunt mule deer early season and axis deer, I really like velvet deer. Mm-hmm. The second question I'll ask you is, how do you prep a velvet antler deer for taxidermy if I can't get it to you same day or next day, or I don't have a big cooler? So tell me about the full body mount thing first. How would I prep that animal?
Well, if you're doing a full body, there's several ways to skin it. Okay, the whole, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, or there's more than one way to skin a cat. That applies to everything. If you're doing an action scene, like say you're mounting a deer jumping a fence or something like that, where their legs are going to be spread out or in different positions, you'd want to cut it down the belly, which I would start at the same place as a shoulder mount.
Okay.
And I'd cut all the way down past his genitals to his rear end, and then I'd open him up, cut down the back sides and the insides of the legs.
Cut down where the white and the tan hair come together.
And then come across on the inside of the back of the back of the hindquarters to where the genitals meet.
Okay.
And make a T there.
You leave his nuts on him, you cut his nuts off?
No, you leave them on.
Okay.
come all the way up, and you basically make an H from the legs, okay?
Yeah.
If you put it into kind of...
Tube them from the elbow down?
No, you can cut
Just
it open.
cut 'em?
Because in a life size, you're going to have to sew it up regardless.
Yeah.
So what I suggest you do is go from the back of the hoofs all the way across like a U, if the deer's laying on his back.
Now you'll leave the hooves on them. Just cut it at the ankle right there.
Yeah, just cut the bone off right there.
Okay.
Let the taxidermist jack with that. But you'll cut all the way across and make it connect from one leg to the other.
Okay.
Then from where that spot meets, go straight down towards the rear end.
Okay.
And then same way on the back legs, you're going to cut from the back of the hooves all the way down to the inside, straight across to the, where the balls or the sack is there. And then you're just going to open it up. Second way, easiest way, if you're just doing a standing or a normal pose, is to cut it dorsally. Just start at the top of where the atlas bone is, and the top of their head, right between their ears meet.
Yep, like you're going to cut his head off.
Right.
Start right there at the back of his skull.
And go straight down to his tail head.
That's the only way I've done them.
That's the easiest way to do it. And then
I've skinned them right down the back. I've even skinned mule deer like that for a shoulder mount. If we're back in the back country,
and that's good.
It's too hard to tube them without hanging them up.
Yeah, the problem with anything that's thin skin, black bug, just small impala, stuff like that, you don't want to cut all the way down the back.
They don't have enough hair to cover the
It's very, very difficult to get that seam to lay down on something like that. So if it's a thicker skin, but if you're going to cut it dorsally, you're going to cut it straight down the middle of the back, stay as straight as you can to the tail head. Cut the tail head off, turn the animal on its side, start at the back of his hoof and cut to his knee.
Okay.
Cut the, where the hoof is, the bone, cut that bone, then, the hoof will come off with the skin.
Right.
And it'll just hang there. And you just peel it down. That's how I skinned that aoudad on the side of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So, we peeled it open, rolled it over, just kept rolling.
It's the same way, even if we're not preparing one for a full body mount, that's the exact same way that we go in the mountains. I killed another elk this year in the backcountry, not a big one, but killed an elk. And it's the same way we quarter them on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Is you cut the hide in the same places, you lay the hide over, now you have a clean work surface to quarter, debone, all that inside the clean side of the flesh.
Right.
What about the velvet deal? Like if I kill if it's in June and I kill a velvet axis deer, or it's in late August, early September, I kill a mule deer in the high country, it's in velvet. How would I protect that for a couple of days to get that to you?
That's gonna be a tougher issue. The only way to really protect that is if the weather's good and cool. The access here in the hill country, if a day's not going to hurt you.
Okay.
But to get it to a cold place as soon as you can is obviously the most important thing. But if you can't, there is alternative means if something does happen and your velvet starts to slip, because basically the time you're hunting them, now axis is different, but the time you're hunting mule deer in the high country, they're tipped out pretty much.
Yeah.
They're not very bulby.
Right.
So
they're getting ready to shed
that
out.
velvet's dried. There may be a few little, slivers of blood veins in there and stuff like that, but
so it'd be pretty hard to inject them with the preservative.
Yeah, I mean it would be tough. The thing that I would do is I would take a bottle of formaldehyde. Okay. And I would, when I killed the deer or caped the deer out or did what I was going to do, cut the horns off if that's a possibility. I would go ahead and inject the tips of every point with a needle, just a regular needle and a syringe and with that formaldehyde, and then I'd rub down the antlers with formaldehyde. Let them soak and do that kind of stuff. So, there is, in case of a mess up or something like that, there are things that we can.
This is live business. We may have some customers showing up here.
There are some.
Get somebody out there?
There are some things.
No, we're good.
There are some things that you can do, which are. There's a process now that can reinstall velvet.
Oh, really?
So if the velvet's no good, the taxidermist, we can strip it off. We can recreate the point and then send it to the velvet.
If I had to, like, would it be a big major offense or a challenge for you guys if I had to get this animal? I didn't have a walk-in cooler. I didn't have formaldehyde. Something happens, whatever. I wasn't prepared. Like we're not always. Is it a big deal, like, to split the skull cap in half, or you can, put it inside a cooler?
You could do that. If you have a cooler, you have no problems.
Yeah. I mean, the whole rack may not fit in there without splitting the skull cap.
Yeah, just cut it at a basically a Z.
Okay.
Just one side and then up the other. That way, when you go to put it back together, you're not trying to line up two straight sides.
Gotcha.
You get kind of like a puzzle piece. But
okay.
But yeah, if you can do that, you can take wet towels and wrap them around it. Keep them cool out of velvet.
Just keep that velvet cool and
right.
moist.
That's the main thing, is keeping the velvet cool.
Okay.
Because bacteria starts with heat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what's the hardest thing you've had to overcome getting into this industry, the hunting and taxidermy business? Because remember, our podcast, mainly what we do is we interview entrepreneurs who have successfully got into the business, but in a lot of ways, we learn a lot about business doing this. And being an entrepreneur is not necessarily as easy as it would be to just go get a nice job somewhere. Because I think that both of us, we could go get a job in town that paid us enough money, we could go hunt for fun and do that kind of thing. So, choosing to be a business owner, what's the most challenging thing you've had to overcome?
Do
you need to pick like 5 examples or just one?
Well, I'm kind of I'm a guy that never gives up. Okay, I've had a lot of things thrown at me in my career, from owning taxidermies to having problems and starting over. Heck, I've moved 3 times before I settled here in Wimberley. And basically that's a tough deal for people to swallow. Hey, my taxidermist is moving, what the heck? Well, I got into it and we've had a lot of struggles, and the work deal was not ever a struggle. I could always go out and get work. I could always find people, because there's plenty of people and people doing providing taxidermy services, but there are so many people wanting taxidermy done. That's what a friend of mine always says, is don't just get what you can get, because there's plenty for everybody to do. And we've kind of lived by that, not stressed or struggled or we have never once put another guy down, which I'm not made like that. We're gonna push forward with what we're doing and continue to see the light at the end of the tunnel every year. And right now we've done 420 mounts in less than 8 months.
That's awesome.
So
it's cranking them out.
Yeah, we've got
3 or 4 man crew.
Yeah, we've got 25 deer heads left from last year. They came in February or March. So, but the struggles that mainly I are finding good help, finding somebody that shares the same passion that I do, and who cares like I care to see it walk out the door.
Yeah, it seemed like that'd be a big challenge always. And that's the challenge a lot of us face as business owners, is finding good help. But you've got to invest a ton of training into these guys. If they don't come to you with a lot of experience, man, you got to invest. You got to teach somebody how to be an artist.
Well, and that's another, there's so many, like you said, there's so many struggles in this. But once you teach somebody what you know, then they're apt to say, hey, I know what I'm doing now. I'll open my own shop, So, you have to be a believer in your employees, and what I did was I hired guys that I know and I trust, and I know where their heart is, I know they're not worried about figuring out how to mount a deer like me and then burning rubber, yeah,
you don't want. You'd rather not train your competitors if you could avoid it.
Exactly, and Clayton's one of my taxidermists. He's been here for 3 years, and he's happy. He's at home, and he does his job, and that
You got to be willing for your business to grow big enough that he can accomplish his goals here, though. Right.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you know.
So you invested in a great shop and a new showroom, so the business can continue growing, so that he doesn't get bored or see that he's limited on opportunities.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and the tough thing is that I incurred mostly is getting knocked down and then having to climb back up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you know, moving shops like I mentioned before. You know, moving shops and having to come back and rebuild a taxidermy in a new town has been a battle. But you know what? You know, we persevered, and now we're here in Wimberley, and we love it. You know, my kids are ecstatic to be in a good town. You know. And
yeah, your kids like it here.
so it's a win-win for us all.
What would you tell other people? Because we get this question all the time, man. You probably do too. I get it from we get it from business owners. You know, when we sell ranches or we go in and we work for outfitters, we meet so many different people, and a lot of people are intrigued by what we do because it appears to be romantic, right? From the outside looking in, this is a fun, romantic industry. You get to make a good living in an industry that everybody else wants to be in. This is what everybody else does for fun. We do it for a living, which is a balancing act in itself, because some days the last thing you want to talk about is hunting and taxidermy, I'm sure. But what would you tell somebody wanting to get into the outdoor industry, either at a young age, right out of college, or somebody that's been working in corporate America that is wanting to get in the outfitting business or buy a ranch and start selling hunts? What would you tell somebody that's interested in the industry?
I mean, mainly, you know, if that's your passion, you know, grab a hold of it. You know, it's not all, you know, great smells and romantic dinners. You know, this is a lot of late nights, nasty.
Yeah, taxidermy work is dirty work.
And there's ways to not have it as nasty, and you know, and that's what we've done here, because you know, we obviously have our shop in a great location, and we don't want the typical taxidermy smell.
Right.
You know, you walk into my shop, it's clean. You know, and I take pride in doing that. But to go back to your question about, you know, if you have a passion for something, you have to stick with it. If that's what's in your mind, you stay with it, because you can't be half in this industry. You've got to be 100%, or you might as well just hang it up. You can't be a part-timer, because this is so much work for a little pay. And that's you know, that's the thing that a lot of people, oh my God, you charge this amount of money for a shoulder mount. Well, if you stayed here a day,
you'd know why.
You would know that, you know, from the caping to the bull and to the, you know, preparation, that it's not that much money. You know, even the new finish guy that started here, you know, he's like, man, when I came in here, I started thinking, oh my gosh, you charge this much for a shoulder mount? That seems high. And then he worked here for a month, and he goes, you don't charge enough.
No.
You know. So, you know, I mean,
how many hours do you think go into one? How many man hours go into one shoulder mount?
If you could possibly do it from start to finish in a day, you know, tanning process, it would be, and drying, and you know, there's so many, but you would spend about 11 hours per head.
Okay.
11 hours of
That's
solid
the
labor.
team. 11 hours for the team.
Well, it like I said, if you could start it by yourself, you could cape it out, have it tanned, do that all by yourself, it would take you as an individual 11 hours.
Okay.
So,
Eric, man, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
This has been good. We're going to get this out hopefully early November, first couple weeks in November. So that's prime time deer season. So hopefully some people are going to want to look you up and send you some business. So how would somebody find Eric Buell, Hookin B Taxidermy?
well, you know, we're here in, our address is actually in San Marcos. It's between Wimberley and San Marcos, but it's, you know, our address is 1090 FM 32 San Marcos 78666. You can find us on the web at Hookin B Outfitters at hookinboutfitters.com.
Okay.
Or you can reach me by email, which is hookinboutfitters@yahoo.com. You can give us a call at the shop, 512-722-3241.
And you've got a pretty good Facebook page too with a lot of photos
we have
on there.
a good Facebook page, and it's Hookin B.
And that's Hookin,
Taxidermy.
Hookin, not hooking with a G.
Right.
Right.
B.
Got it.
So yeah, and we're here. You could call, you could email, you could do whatever you need to do. We can, we'll get the phone call, we'll get the message, and
We can coordinate drop-offs and pickups
Yeah.
at the ranch if you need. Like if somebody's got a ranch and they're going to have a group of hunters in,
Yeah.
we can coordinate a pickup for those and go grab some bulk animals.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and we supply.
You stood me up yesterday. You were out grabbing some heads yesterday.
Yeah, I had to go to a ranch and pick up some nice whitetail they killed this weekend. So, that's what I think customers value. Especially these guys that are successful and own big places. They value that they don't have to worry. Hey, Eric will just come grab it. And I'll offer that. But here's the difference. I'm not going to drive to San Angelo for one deer head.
Sure.
If you got 4 or 5 or save them up, heck, I'll run out there and grab them.
Yeah.
And then we and for the people that are busy, we can arrange delivery, we can arrange shipping, we can arrange all of it. So
It's a full service shop.
yeah, we're in the future we're probably gonna do some small taking care of quartering and stuff like that, so it'll be easier
Okay.
for the customer to I know a lot of guys kill a deer and they throw it in their truck and they head to the taxidermist, and we're sitting here going, well,
They head to the processor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the processor gets it to a taxidermist maybe.
right. So
How can I help you, man? What can we do for you?
yeah, well, you can send me a bunch of customers.
Love it. Thanks, Eric.
You bet.